Under Milkwood is certainly the most ambitious play which the cast has undertaken so far. It was written as a radio play and first broadcast on BBC in 1953. It's the story of one small Welsh seaside town and of every town. 70 years after its performance, we will all easily recognise familiar personalities and be touched by the humour and tragedy of ordinary life illustrated in the daily encounters and exploits of its population. The play tells the story of one day from pre-dawn one morning in spring until pre-dawn of the following day. Not only do we find out what people are doing, we find out what they are dreaming about, what they are remembering, and what they are hoping for. We have two guides, two voices, who take us through the town and through the day, from house to house and place to place. Let's join them now and allow them to begin the story.
Begin at the beginning. It is spring, a moonless night in the small town, starless and Bible black. The cobble streets silent, and the hunched quarters and rabbits wood, limping invisible down to the slow black, crow black, fishing boat bobbing sea. The houses are blind as moles, though moles see fine tonight in the snouting velvet dingles. Or blind as Captain Cat there in the muffled middle by the pump and the town clock, the shops in mourning, the welfare hall in widow's weeds, and all of the people of the lulled and dumbfound town are sleeping now.
Hush, the babies are sleeping, the farmers, the fishers, and the tradesmen and pensioners, cobbler, school teacher, postman, and publican, the undertaker and the fancy woman, drunkard, dressmaker, preacher, policeman, the web-foot cocklewomen, and the tidy wives. Young girls lie bedded soft or glide in their dreams with rings and trousseau, brides mated by glowworms down the aisles of the organ playing wood. The boys are dreaming wicked, or of the bucking ranches of the night and the jolly Rogered sea. And the anthracite statues of the horses sleep in the fields, and the cows in the byres, and the dogs in the wet-nosed yards, and the cats nap in the slant corners or lopes lie, streaking and needling on the one cloud of the roofs.
You can hear the dew falling and the hushed town breathing. Only your eyes are unclosed to see the black and folded town fast and slow asleep. And you alone can hear the invisible star fall, the darkest before dawn, minutely dew-grazed stir of the black dab-filled sea, where the Arethusa, the curlew and the skylark, Zanzibar, Rhiannon, the rover, the cormorant, and the star of Wales tilt and ride.
Listen, it is night moving in the streets, the processional salt, slow, musical wind in Coronation Street and Cockle Row. It is the grass growing on Cloragum Hill, dewfall, starfall, the sleep of birds in Milkwood.
Listen, it is night in the chill, squat chapel, hymning in bonnet and brooch and bombazine black, butterfly choker and bootlace bow, coughing like nanny goats sucking mintos, 40 winking hallelujah. Night in the fore ale, quiet as a domino, In Ocky milkman's loft like a mouse with gloves. In Diebread's bakery flying like black flour. It is tonight in Donkey Street, trotting silent with seaweed on its hooves along the cockled cobbles. Past curtained fern pot, text and trinket, harmonium, holy dresser, watercolours done by hand, china dog and rosy tin tea caddy. It is night, neddying among the snuggeries of babies.
Look, it is night, dumbly, royally winding through the coronation cherry trees, going through the graveyard of Bethesda with winds gloved and folded and dew doffed, tumbling by the sailors' arms. Time passes. Listen. Time passes. Come closer now.
Only you can hear the houses sleeping in the streets in the slow, deep, salt and silent, black bandaged night. Only you can see in the blinded bedrooms, the combs and petticoats over the chairs, the jugs and basins, the glasses of teeth, thou shalt not on the wall, and the yellowing dicky bird watching pictures of the dead. Only you can hear and see behind the eyes of the sleepers, the movements and countries and mazes and colours and dismays and rainbows and tunes and wishes and flight and fall and despairs and big seas of their dreams. Captain Cat, the retired blind sea captain, asleep in his bunk in the sea-shelled ship in bottled ship-shape best cabin of Schooner House, dreams of...
Never such seas as any that swamped the decks of the SS Kidwelly, bellying over the bedclothes, and jellyfish slippery sucking him down, salt deep into the davy dark, where the fish come biting out and nibble at my toes, down to my wishbone, and the long drown nuzzle up to me.
Remember me, Captain.
Aye, you're Dancing Williams.
I lost my step in Nantucket.
Do you see me, Captain? The white bone talking. I'm Tom Fred the Donkey Man. We shared the same girl once. Her name was Mrs. Probert.
Rosie Probert, 33 Duck Lane. Come on up, boys. I'm dead.
Hold me, Captain. I'm Jonah Jarvis, come to a bad end. Very enjoyable.
Alfred Pomeroy Jones, sea lawyer, born in Mumbles, sung like a linnet, crowned you with a flagon, tattooed with mermaids, thirst like a dredger, died of blisters.
The skull at your ear hole is...
Only Bevan, tell my auntie it was me that pawned the Ormolu clock.
Aye, aye, Curly.
Tell my missus. No, I never.
I never done what she said. I never.
Yes, they did.
And who brings coconuts and shawls and parrots to my Gwen now?
How's it above?
Is there rum and lava bread?
Bosoms and robins.
Concertinas.
Ebenezer's bell.
Fighting and onions.
And sparrows and daisies.
Fiddlers in a jam jar.
Buttermilk and whippets.
Rockabye baby.
Washing on the line.
And old gales in the snug.
How's the tenors and dowlas?
Who milks the cows in my squin?
When she smiles, is there dimples?
What's the smell of parsley?
Oh, my dead dears.
From where you are, You can hear in Cockle Row in the spring moonless night, Miss Price, dressmaker and sweet shopkeeper, dreams of
Her lover, tall as the town clock tower, Samson's syrup gold maned, whacking tide and piping hot, thunderbolt based and barnacle breasted, flailing upon the cockles with his eyes like blow lamps, and scooping low over her lonely, loving, hot water bottled body.
My van wee Price,
Mr. Mogg Edwards.
I am a draper mad with love. I'll have you more than all the flannelette and calico, Candlewick, Dimity, Crash and Marion, Trousseau, Crepton, Muslim, Poplin, Tickling and Twill in the whole cloth what of the world. I have come to take you away to my employment the hill, where the change hums on wires. Throw away your little bed socks, your Welsh wool knitted jacket. I will warm the sheets like an electric toaster. I will lie by your side like the Sunday roast.
I will knit you a wallet of forget-me-not blue for the money to be comfy. I will warm your heart by the fire so you can slip it in under your vest when the shop is closed.
Mawani, before the mice gnaw at your bottom drawer, will you say?
Yes, Mog, yes. Mog, yes, yes, yes.
And all the bells of the tills of the town shall ring for our wedding.
Come now, drift up the dark. Come up the drifting sea dark street now in the dark night, seesawing like the sea. To the Bible black airless attic over Jack Black the cobbler's shop, where alone and savagely Jack Black sleeps in a nightshirt tied to his ankles with elastic and dreams of
chasing the naughty couples down the grass-green gooseberry double bed of the wood, flogging the toss pots in the spit and sawdust, driving out the bare, bold girls from the sixpenny hops of his nightmares.
Ugga thee.
Evans the Death, the Undertaker.
Laughs high and aloud in his sleep and curls up his toes. As he seized upon waking 50 years ago, snow lie deep in the goose field behind the sleeping house. And he runs out into the field where his mother is making Welsh cakes in the snow and steals a fistful of snowflakes and currants and climbs back to bed to eat them cold and sweet under the warm white clothes, while his mother dances in the snow kitchen, crying out for her lost currant.
and in the little pink-eyed cottage next to the undertaker's lie alone the 17 snoring gentle stone of Mr. Waldoch, rabbit catcher, barber, herbalist, cat doctor, quack, his fat pink hands, palms up over the edge of the patchwork quilt, his black boots neat and tidy in the washing basin, his bowler on a nail above the bed, a milk stout and a slice of cold bread pudding under the pillow, and dripping in the dark, he dreams of...
This little piggy went to the market. This little piggy stayed at home. This little piggy had roast beef, and this little piggy had none. And this little piggy went wee, 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 all the way home to...
Waldo!
Yes, Bloodwin, love.
Oh, what'll the neighbours say? What'll they say?
Poor Mrs. Pardock.
What she puts up with. Never.
Never should be married.
If she hadn't had to.
Same as her mother.
There's a husband for you.
That as his father.
And you know where he ended?
Oh, up in the asylum.
Crying for his ma.
Every Saturday.
He hasn't got a leg.
And carrying on.
With that Mrs. Beatty Morris.
Up in the quarry.
And seen her baby.
It's got his nose.
Oh, it makes my heart bleed.
What he'll do for drink.
He sold the pianola.
And her sewing machine.
Falling in the gutter.
Talking to the lamppost.
Using language.
Singing in the W.
Poor Mrs. Waldo.
Oh, Waldo! Waldo!
Breaking windows.
Making mud pies.
Send him to bed without any supper.
Give him cenopods and lock him in the dark.
Off to the reformatory.
Now, in her iceberg white, holily laundered crinoline nightgown, under virtuous polar sheets, in her spruced and scoured, dustifying bedroom in trig and trim Bayview, a house for paying guests at the top of the town, Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard, widow twice of Mr. Ogmore, linoleum, retired, and Mr. Pritchard, failed bookmaker who, maddened by besaming, swabbing and scrubbing, the voice of the vacuum cleaner and the fume of polish, ironically swallowed disinfectant, fidgets in her rinsed sleep, wakes in a dream and nudges in the ribs, dead Mr. Ogmore, dead Mr. Pritchard, ghostly on either side.
Mr. Ogmore, Mr. Pritchard, it's time to inhale your balsam.
Oh, Mrs. Ogmore.
Oh, Mrs. Pritchard.
Soon it'll be time to get up. Tell me your task in order.
I must put my pajamas in the drawer marked pajamas.
I must take my cold bath, which is good for me.
I must wear my flannel band to ward off sciatica.
I must dress behind the curtain and put on my apron.
I must blow my nose.
In the garden, if you please.
In a piece of tissue paper, which I afterwards burn.
I must take my salts, which are nature's friend.
I must boil the drinking water because of germs.
I must take my herb tea, which is free from tannin.
And have a charcoal biscuit, which is good for me.
I may smoke one pipe of asthma mixture.
In the woodshed, if you please.
And dust the parlour and spray the canary.
I must put on my rubber gloves and search for the peak of fleas.
I must dust the blinds and then I must raise them.
And before you let the sun in, mind it wipes its feet.
In Butcher Bainan's, Gossamer Bainan, daughter, school teacher, dreaming deep, daintily ferrets under a fluttering hummock of chicken's feathers in a slaughterhouse that has chintz curtains and a three-piece suite, and finds, with no surprise, a small, rough, ready man with a bushy tail winking in a paper carrier.
Help!
Cries Organ Morgan, the organist in his dreams.
There is perturbation and music in Coronation Street. All the spouses are honking like geese and the babies singing opera. P.C. Attila Rees has got his truncheon out and is playing cadenzas by the pump, and cows from Sunday Meadow ring like reindeer. And on the roof of Handel Villas, see the women's welfare hoofing, bloomered in the moon.
Oh, at last, my love.
Sighs Gossamer Bainan, and the bushy tail wags rude and ginger.
At the sea end of the town, Mr. and Mrs. Floyd, the Cocklers, are sleeping as quiet as death, side by wrinkled side, toothless, salt and brown, like two old kippers in a box. And high above in Salt Lake Farm, Mr. Utah Watkins counts all night the wife-faced sheep as they leap the fences on the hill, smiling and knitting and bleating, just like Mrs. Utah Watkins.
34, 35, 36, 48, 89.
Knit one, slip one, knit two together, pass one over the slip stitch,
Ocky milkman, drowned asleep in Cockle Street, is emptying his churns into the Derwy River.
Regardless of expense.
And weeping like a funeral.
Harry Owen, next door, lifts a tankard to his lips, but nothing flows out of it. He shakes the tankard. It turns into a fish. He drinks the fish.
Sinbad sailors, over the tap room of the Sailor's Arms, hugs his damp pillow whose secret name is Gossamer Bainan. A mogul catches Lily Smalls in the wash house.
Oh, you old mogul.
Mrs. Rose Cottage's eldest, May, peels off her pink and white skin in a furnace in a tower, in a cave, in a waterfall, in a wood, and waits there raw as an onion for Mr. Right to leap up the burning tall hollows, flashes of leaves, like a brilliantined trout.
Call me Dolores, like they do in the stories.
The owls are hunting. Look over Bethesda. Gravestones, one hoots and hoots and catches a mouse by Hannah Rees' beloved wife. And in Coronation Street, which you alone can see, it is so dark under the chapel in the skies. The Reverend Eli Jenkins, poet, preacher, turns in his sleep towards dawn sleep and dreams of...
I stead for I.
He intricately rhymes to the music of Crip and Pigborn all night long in his druid sweetie nighty and a beer tent black cloths.
In Donkey Street, so furred with sleep, die bread Polygata, no good boyo, and Lord Cutglass sigh before the dawn that is about to be, and dream.
But the skells, horizontal.
Tick, tock, tick, tock, tick, tock, tick, tock, tick, tock, tick, tock, tick, tock.
Time passes. Listen. Time passes. An owl flies home past Bethesda to a chapel in an oak, and the dawn inches up. Stand on this hill. This is Llargib Hill, old as the hills, high, cool and green, and from this small circle of stones, made not by druids, but by Mrs. Bainan's Billy, you can see all the town below you, sleeping in the first of the dawn. You can hear the lovesick wood pigeons mooning in bed. A dog barks in his sleep, farmyards away. The town ripples like a lake in the waking haze. The principality of the sky lightens now over our green hill into spring morning, larked and crowed and belling. Who pulls the town hall bell rope but blind Captain Cat? One by one, the sleepers are wrung out of sleep this one morning as every morning. And soon you shall see the chimneys slow up flying snow as Captain Cat in sailor's cap and sea boots announces today with his loud get out of bed bell.
Reverend Eli Jenkins in Bethesda House gropes out of bed into his preacher's black, combs back his bard's white hair, forgets to wash, pads barefoot downstairs, opens the front door, stands in the doorway and, looking out at the day and up at the eternal hill, and hearing the sea break and the gathered birds, remembers his own verses and tells them softly to empty Coronation Street that is rising and raising its blinds.
Dear Gwalia, I know there are towns lovelier than ours, and fairer hills and loftier far, and groves more full of flowers, and boskier woods more blithe with spring, and bright with birds adorning, and sweeter birds than I to sing their praise this beauteous morning. By Cadar Idris tempest torn, or Moily Widfa's glory, Carnet Llewellyn beauty born, Plinlimmon old in story. By mountains where King Arthur dreams, by Penmine Moor defiant, Clarigib Hill a molehill seems, a pygmy to a giant. By Carrick-Kennan, king of time, our heron head is only a bit of stone with seaweed spread, where gulls come to be lonely. A tiny dingle is Milkwood, by Golden Grove neat Grongar. But let me choose, and oh, I should love all my life and longer, to stroll among our trees and stray in Goosegog Lane, on Donkey Down, and hear the Dowie sing all day, and never, never leave the town.
The Reverend Jenkins closes the front door. His morning service is over.
Now, woken at last by the out-of-bed sleepyhead, Polly put the kettle on town hall bell. Lily Smalls, Mrs. Bainan's treasure, comes downstairs from a dream of royalty, who all night long went larking with her full of sauce in the Milkwood dark, and puts the kettle on the Primus ring in Mrs. Bainan's kitchen, and looks at herself in Mr. Bainan's shaving glass over the sink, and sees...
Oh, there's a face. Where'd you get that hair from? Got it from an old tomcat. Give it back then, love. Oh, and there's a perm. Where'd you get that nose from, Lily? Got it from my father, silly. You've got it on upside down. Oh, there's a conch. Oh, look at your complexion. Needs a bit of makeup. Needs a veil. Oh, there's glamour. Where'd you get that smile, Lil? Never you mind, girl. Nobody loves you. That's what you think. Who is it loves you? John? Oh, come on, Lily. Cross your heart then. Cross my heart.
Very softly, her lips almost touching her reflection, she breathes the name and clouds the shaving glass.
Lily, Lily. Yes, Mum. Where's my tea, girl? Where do you think it is? In the cat box. Coming up, Mum.
Mr. Pugh, in the schoolhouse opposite, takes up the morning tea to Mrs. Pugh and whispers on the stairs.
Here's your arsenic, dear, and your weed killer biscuit. I've throttled your parakeet. I've spat in the vases. I've put cheese in the mouse holes.
The door creaks open.
Here's your nice tea, dear.
Too much sugar.
You haven't tasted it yet, dear.
Too much milk then. Has Mr. Jenkins said his poetry?
Yes, dear.
Then it's time to get up. Give me my glasses. No, not my reading glasses. I want to look out I want to see
Lily Smalls, the treasure, down on her red knees, washing the front step.
she's tucked her dress in her bloomers. Oh, the baggage.
Police Constable Attila Rees, ox broad, barge booted, stomping out of handcuff house in a heavy beef red huff, black browed under his damp helmet.
He's going to arrest Polly Garter. Mark my words.
For, my dear.
For having babies.
And lumbering down towards the strand to see that the sea is still there.
Mary and the sailors opening her bedroom window above the tap room and calling out to the heavens.
85 years, 3 months and a day.
I will say this for her. She never makes a mistake.
Organ Morgan at his bedroom window playing chords on the sill to the moaning fishwife girls who, heckling over Donkey Street, observe.
Me, dry bread, hurrying to the bakery, pushing in my shirt tails, buttoning my waistcoat, thinking, there goes a button. Why can't they sew them on? No time for breakfast, nothing for breakfast. There's wise for you.
And me, Mrs. Dyebread 1, Captain shawled, and no old corset. Nice to be comfy, nice to be nice. Clogging on the cobbles to store up a neighbour. Oh, Mrs. Sarah, can you spare a loaf, love? Dyebread forgot the bread. There's a lovely morning. How's your boils this morning? Oh, it's good news now. It's a change to sit down. Ta, Mrs. Sarah.
And me, Mrs. Dyebread 2, gypsy to kill in a scarlet petticoat above my knees, dirty pretty knees. See my body through my petticoat, brown as a berry. High-heeled shoes with one heel missing. Tortoiseshell comb in my bright black slinky hair. Nothing else at all on, except a dab of scent. Lolling gaudy in the doorway. Tell your fortune in the tea leaves. Scowling at the sunshine, lighting up my pipe.
Me, Lord Cutglass in an old frock coat that belonged to Eli Jenkins, and a pair of postman's trousers from Bethesda Jumble, running out to the door to empty slots. Mine there over, and then running in again. Tick.
Me, no good by you, to no good in the wash house.
Me, Miss Price, in my pretty print housecoat, deft at the clothesline, natty as a jenny wren, then pit-pat back to my egg in its cosy, my crisp toast fingers, my homemade plum and butter pat.
Me, Polly Garter, under the washing line, giving the breast in the garden to my bonny new baby. Nothing grows in our garden, only washing and babies. And where's their fathers live, my love? Over the hills and far away. You're looking at me now. I know what you're thinking, you poor little milky creature. You're thinking, you're no better than you could be, Polly. And that's good enough for me. Oh, isn't life a terrible thing? Thank God.
Now, frying pans spit, kettles and cats purr in the kitchens. The town smells of seaweed and breakfast all the way down from Bayview, where Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard in smock and turban, big besomed to engage the dust, picks at her starchless bread and sips lemon rind tea, to Bottom Cottage, where Mr. Waldo in bowler and bib gobbles his bubble and squeak and kippers and swigs from the sauce bottle. Mary and the sailors.
Praise the Lord who made porridge.
Mr. Pugh
remembers ground glass as he juggles his omelette.
Mrs. Pugh
nags the salt cellar.
Willy-nilly postman
downs his last bucket of black brackish tea and rumbles out bandy to the clucking back, where the hens twitch and grieve for their tea-soaked sops.
Mrs. Willy-nilly,
full to her double-chinned brim, broods and bubbles over her coven of kettles on the hissing hot range, all was ready to steam open the mail.
the Reverend Eli Jenkins,
finds a rhyme and dips his pen in his cocoa.
Lord Cutglass in his ticking kitchen,
Jumpers from clock to clock with a bunch of clock keys in one hand and a fish head in the other.
Captain Cat in his galley,
blind and fine-fingered, savours my sea fry.
Mr. and Mrs. Cherry Owen in the Donkey Street room that is bedroom, parlour, kitchen and scullery, sit down to last night's supper of onions boiled in their overcoats and broth of spuds and bacon rind and leeks and bones.
See that smudge on the wall by the picture of Auntie Blossom? That's where you threw the sago. You only missed me by an inch.
I always miss Auntie Blossom too.
Remember last night? In you reeled, my boy, as drunk as a deacon with a big wet bucket and a fish frail full of stout. And you looked at me. God has come home, you said. And then over the bucket you went, sprawling and bawling, and the floor was all flagons and eels.
Was I wounded?
And then you took off your trousers and you said, does anybody want to fight? Oh, you old baboon.
Give us a kiss.
Oh, and then you sang Aberystwyth, tenor and bass.
I always sing Aberystwyth.
And then you did a little dance on the table.
I did?
Drop dead.
And then what did I do?
Then you cried like a baby and said you were a poor drunk orphan with nowhere to go but the grave.
And what did I do next, my dear?
Then you danced on the table all over again and said you were King Solomon Owen and I was your Mrs. Sheba.
And then?
And then I got you into bed and you breathed all night like a brewery.
From Bain and Butcher's in Coronation Street, the smell of fried liver sidles out with onions on its breath. And listen, in the dark breakfast room behind the shop, Mr. and Mrs. Bainan, waited upon by their treasure, enjoy between bites their every morning hullabaloo, and Mrs. Bainan slips the gristly bits under the tasseled tablecloth to her fat cat. The cat purrs.
She likes the liver, Ben.
Ah, she ought to do, Bess. It's her brother's.
Do you hear that, Lily?
Yes, Mum.
What eating pusscat?
Yes, Mum.
Oh, you cat butcher.
It was doctored mind.
What's that got to do with it?
Yesterday he had more.
Oh, Lily.
Monday it was otter and Tuesday shrews.
Go on, Mr. Bynum. He's the biggest liar in town.
Don't you dare say that about Mr. Bynum.
Everybody knows it, Mum.
Mr. Bynum never tells a lie. Do you, Ben?
And no, Bess. And now I'm going out after the corgis with my little cleaver.
Oh, Lily.
Up the street in the Sailor's Arms, Sindbad Sailors, grandson of Mary Ann the Sailors, draws a pint in the sunlit bar. The ship's clock in the bar says 11:30. 11:30 is opening time. The hands of the clock have stayed still at 11:30 for 50 years. It is always opening time in the Sailor's Arms.
Here's to me, Sinbad.
All over the town, babies and old men are cleaned and put into their broken prams and wheeled on to the sunlit cockled cobbles or out into the backyards under the dancing vests and left. A baby cries.
I want my pipe and he wants his bottle.
Noses are wiped, heads picked, hair combed, paws scrubbed, ears boxed, and the children shrilled off to school.
Fishermen grumble to their nets. No good boyer goes out in the dingy Zanzibar. Ships the oars, drifts slowly in the dab-filled bay, and lying on the back in the unbaled water among crabs' legs and tangled lines, looks up at the spring sky.
I don't know who's up there, and I don't care.
He turns his head and looks up at Clarigab Hill and sees among the green lathered trees the white houses of the strewn away farms, where farm boys whistle, dogs shout, cows low, but all too far away for him or you to hear. And in the town, the shops squeak open. Mr. Edwards in butterfly collar and straw hat at the doorway of Manchester House measures with his eye the dawdlers by for striped flannel shirts and shrouds and flowery blouses, and bellows to himself in the darkness behind his eye,
I love Miss Price.
Syrup is sold in the post office. A cart drives to market full of fowls and a farmer. Milk churns stand at Coronation Corner like short silver policemen. And sitting at the open window of Schooner House, blind Captain Cat hears all the morning of the town. He hears the voices of children and the noise of children's feet on the cobbles.
Maggie Richards. Tommy Powell, our Sal, Little Gerwine, Billy Swansea with his dog's voice, one of Mr. Waldoch's, Nasty Humphrey, Jackie with the sniff. Where's Dickie's Albie? And the boys from Taipant? Perhaps they got the rash again. Oh, somebody's hit Maggie Richards. 2-1, it's Billy Swansea. Never trust a boy who barks. Ha ha, right again. That's Billy. And that's Willy-nilly, knocking at Bayview. Rat-tat-tat, very soft. The knocker's got a kid glove on. Who sent a letter to Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard? Careful now. She swabs the front glassy. Every step's like a bar of soap. Mind your size 12s. That old Bessie would beeswax the lawn to make the birds slip.
Morning, Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard.
Morning, postman.
Here's a letter for you with stamped and addressed envelope enclosed, all the way from Wilt Wells. A gentleman wants to study birds, and can he have accommodation for 2 weeks and a bath, vegetarian?
Oh, no.
You wouldn't know he was in the house, Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard. He'd be out in the morning at the bang of dawn with bags of breadcrumbs and his little telescope.
And come home at all hours covered with feathers. I don't want persons in my nice clean clothes breeding all over my chairs.
Cross my heart, he won't breed.
And putting their feet on my carpets and sneezing on my china and sleeping in my sheets.
He only wants a single bed, Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard.
And back she goes to the kitchen to polish the potatoes.
Captain Cat hears Willy-nilly's feet heavy on the distant cobbles.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's Mrs. Rose Cottage. What's today? Today she gets the letter from her sister in Gowersluss. How's the twins' teeth? He's stopping at the schoolhouse.
Morning, Mrs. Pugh. Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard won't have a gentleman from Wiltwells because he'll sleep in her sheets. Mrs. Rose Cottage sister in Gorlas. Twins have got to have them out.
Give me the parcel.
It's for Mr. Pugh, Mrs. Pugh.
Never you mind. What's inside it?
A book called The Lives of Great Poisoners.
And that's Manchester House.
Morning, Mr. Edwards. Very small news. Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard won't have birds in her house, and Mr. Pugh bought a book now on how to do in Mrs. Pugh.
Have you got a letter from her?
Miss Price loves you with all her heart. Smells of lavender today. She's down to the last of her elderflower wine, but the quince jam's bearing up, and she's knitting roses on the doilies. Last week she sold 3 jars of boiled sweets, pound of humbugs, half a box of jelly babies, and 6 coloured photographs of Claragub. Then 21 X's.
Oh, willy-nilly, she's a ruby. Here's my letter. Put it into her hands now.
And down the street comes willy-nilly, and Captain Cat hears other steps approaching.
Mr. Waldoch hurrying to the Sailor's Arms. A pint of stout with an egg in it. There's a letter for him.
It's another paternity summons, Mr. Waldo.
The quick footsteps hurry on along the cobbles and up 3 steps to the Sailor's Arms.
Quick, Sinbad, pint of stout, no egg in.
People are moving now up and down the cobbled street.
All the women are out this morning in the sun. You can tell it's spring. There goes Mrs. Cherry. You can tell her by her trotters. Off she trots, new as a daisy. Who's that talking by the pump? Mrs. Floyd and Boyo talking flatfish. What can you talk about flatfish? That's Mrs. Diebread one waltzing up the street like a jelly. Every time she shakes, it slap, slap, slap. And who's that? Mrs. Butcher Bainan with her pet black cat. It follows her everywhere, meow and all. And there goes Mrs. 23, important. The sun gets up and goes down in her dewlap, and when she shuts her eyes, it's night. High heels now in the morning too. Mrs. Rose Cottage's eldest, May. 17 and never been kissed. Going young and milking under my window to the field with the nanny goats. She reminds me all the way. Can't hear what the women are gabbing at round the pump. Same as ever. Who's having a baby? Who blacked whose eye? Who's seen Polly Garter giving her belly an airing? There should be a law. See Mrs. Bainham's new mauve jumper? It's her old grey jumper dyed. Who's dead? Who's dying? There's a lovely day. Oh, and the cost of soap flakes. Morgan's at it early. You can tell it's spring.
And he hears the sound of milk cans.
Ocky milkman on his round. I will say this, his milk's as fresh as the dew. Half dew it is. Snuffle on Ocky, watering the town. Somebody's coming. Now the voices round the pump can hear somebody coming. Hush. There's a hush. You can tell by the noise of the hush. It's Polly Garter. Hello, Polly. Who's there?
Me, love.
That's Polly Gata. Hello, Polly, my love.
Can you hear the dumb goose hiss of the wives as they huddle and peck or flounce at a waddle away? Who cuddled you when? Which of their gandering hubbies moaned in Milkwood for your naughty mothering arms and body like a wardrobe, love? Scrub the floors of the welfare hall for the Mothers' Union social dance. Your one mother won't wriggle her roly-poly bum or pat her fat little buttery foot in that wedding ringed holy tonight, though the waltzing breadwinners, snatched from the cozy smoke of the sailors' arms, will frizzle and mope.
Too late. Too late.
For the town's half over with its mourning. The morning's busy as bees.
There's the clip-clop of horses on the sun-honeyed cobbles of the humming streets, hammering of horseshoes, gobble, quack and cackle, tom-tit twitter from the burdown's boughs, braying on donkey down. Bread is baking, pigs are grunting, chop goes the butcher, milk churns bell, tills ring, sheep cough, dogs shout, saws sing. Oh, the spring whinny and morning moo from the clog dancing farms, the gulls gab and rabble on the boat bobbing river and sea, and the cockles bubbling in the sand. Scamper of sandalings, curlew cry, crow caw, pigeon coo, clock strike, bull bellow, and the raggled gabble of the bear garden school as the women scratch and babble in Mrs. Organ Morgan's general shop where everything is sold. Custard buckets, henna, rat traps, shrimp nets, sugar stamps, confetti, paraffin, hatchets, whistles.
Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard.
La-di-da.
Got a man in Biltwells.
And he got a little telescope to look at birds.
Willy-nilly said.
Remember her first husband? He didn't need a telescope.
He looked at them undressing through the keyhole.
And he used to shout, tally-ho!
But Mr. Ogmore was a proper gentleman.
Even though he hanged his collie.
Seen Mrs. Butcher Bainon?
She said Butcher Bainon put dogs in the mincer.
Go on, he's pulling your leg.
Now don't you dare tell her that, there's a dear.
Or she'll think he's trying to pull it off and eat it.
There's a nasty lot live here when you come to think of it.
Look at that no good boyo now.
Too lazy to wipe his snout.
And going out fishing every day. And all he ever brought back was a Mrs. Samuels.
A bit in the water a week.
And look at Ocky Milkman's wife. And nobody's ever seen.
He keeps her in the cupboard with the empties.
And think of Di Bread with 2 wives.
One for the daytime and one for the night.
Men are brutes on the quiet.
And how's Organ Morgan, Mrs. Morgan?
He looks dead beat.
It's Organ Morgan all the time with him.
Up every night until midnight, playing the organ.
Oh, I'm a martyr to music.
Outside, the sun springs down on the rough and tumbling town. It runs through the hedges of Goosegog Lane, cuffing the birds to sing. Spring whips green down Cockle Row, and the shells sing out. Llargib, this snip of a morning is wild fruit and warm. The streets, fields, sands and waters springing in the young sun. And in willy-nilly the postman's dark and sizzling damp tea tea-coated misty pygmy kitchen, where the spitting kettles throb and hop on the range. Mrs. Willy-nilly steams open Mr. Mogg Edwards' letter to Miss Mavanry Price and reads it aloud to Willy-nilly by the squint of the spring sun through the one sealed window running with tears, while the drugged, bedraggled hens at the back door whimper and snivel for the licorice bog black tea.
From Manchester Hout, Clarigib, sole proprietor Mr. Mogg Edwards, late of Twill, linen draper, haberdasher, master tailor, costumier, beloved Mavanry Price, my bride in heaven.
I love you until death do us part, and then we shall be together forever and ever. A new parcel of ribbons has come from Cardamon. Today, all the colours in the rainbow. I wish I could tie a ribbon in your hair, a white one, but it cannot be. I dreamed last night you're all dripping wet and you sat on my lap as the Reverend Jenkins went down the street. I see you got a mermaid in your lap, he said, and he lifted his hat. He's a proper Christian, not like Cherry Owen, who said you should have thrown her back, he said. Business is very poorly. Polly Gatter bought 2 gaiters with roses, but she never got stockings. So what is the use, I say? Mr. Waldo tried to sell me a woman's nightie outsize. He said he found it, and we know where. I sold a packet of pins to Tom the sailors to pick his teeth. If this goes on, I shall be in the workhouse. My heart is in your bosom, and yours is in mine. Be with you always, me Wani Price, and keep you lovely for me in his heavenly mansion. I must stop now, and remain your eternal Mogg Edwards.
And then a little message with a rubber stamp. Shop at Mogg's.
And willy-nilly, rumbling, Jock is out again to the 3-seated shack called the House of Commons in the back, where the hens weep, and sees in sudden springshine
herring gulls heckling down to the harbour where fishermen spit and prop the morning up and eye the fishy sea smooth to the sea's end as it lulls in blue. Green and gold money, tobacco, tin salmon, hats with feathers, pots of fish paste, warmth for the winter to be, weave and leap in it rich and slippery in the flash and shapes of fishes through the cold sea streets. But with blue, lazy eyes, the fishermen gaze at that mild, whispering water with no rock or ripple, as though it blew great funds and serpents and typhooned the town.
Too rough for fishing today.
And they thank God and Gabra Gull for luck, and Moss Slow and Silent make their way uphill from the still, still sea towards the sailors' arms as the children spank and scamper rough and singing out of school into the draggle-tail yard. And Captain Cat at his window says soft to himself the words of their song.
Johnny Crack and Flossie Snail kept their baby in a milking pail. Flossie Snail and Johnny Crack, one would pull it out and one would put it back. Oh, it's my turn now, said Flossie Snail, to take the baby from the milking pail. And now it's my turn, said Johnny Crack, to smack it on the head and put it back. Johnny Crack and Flossie Snail kept the baby in a milking pail. One would put it back and one would pull it out, and all it had to drink was ale and stout. For Johnny Crack and Flossie Snail always used to say that stout and ale was good for a baby in a milking pail.
The music of the spheres is heard distinctly over Milkwood. It is the rustle of spring.
Mrs. Diebread 1 and Mrs. Diebread 2 are sitting outside their house in Dumpy Lane, one darkly, one plumply blooming in the quick, dewy sun, Mrs. Diebread, too, is looking into a crystal ball, which she holds in the lap of her dirty scarlet petticoat, hard against her hard, dark thighs.
Cross my palm with silver. Out of our housekeeping money.
What do you see?
Ah,
What do you see, lovey?
I see a feather bed with 3 pillows on it and a text above the bed. I can't read what it says. There's great clouds blowing. Now they've blown away. God is love, the text says.
That's our bed.
And now it's vanished. The sun's spinning like a top. Who's this coming out of the sun? It's a hairy little man with big pink lips. He's got a wall eye.
It's Diebread.
Shh! The feather bed's floating back. The little man's taking his boots off. He's pulling his shirt over his head. He's beating his chest with his fists. He's climbing into bed.
Go on, go on.
There's 2 women in bed. He looks at them both, with his head cocked on one side. He's whistling through his teeth. Now he grips his little arms around one of the women.
Which one? Which one?
I can't see any more. There's great clouds blowing again.
Oh, the mean old clouds.
The morning is all singing. The Reverend Eli Jenkins, busy on his morning calls, stops outside the welfare hall to hear Polly Garter sing as she scrubs the floors for the Mothers' Union dance tonight.
I loved a man whose name was Tom. He was strong as a bear and 2 yards long. I loved a man whose name was Dick. He was big as a barrel and 3 feet thick. And I loved a man whose name was Harry, 6 feet tall and sweet as a cherry. But the one I loved best, awake or sleep, was little Willie Wee, and he's 6 feet deep. Oh, Tom, Dick and Harry were 3 fine men, and I'll never have such loving again. But little Willie Wee, who took me on his knee, little Willie Weasel is the man for me. Now men from every parish round run after me and roll me on the ground. But whenever I love another man back, Johnny from the hill or Sailing Jack, I always think as they do what they please of Tom, Dick and Harry, who are tall as trees. And most I think when I'm by their side of little Willie Wee, who downed and died. Oh, Tom, Dick and Harry were 3 fine men, and I'll never have such loving again. But little Willie Wee, who took me on his knee, little Willie Weasel is the man for me.
Praise the Lord. We are a musical nation.
And the Reverend Eli Jenkins hurries on through the town to visit the sick with jelly and poems.
The town's as full as a lovebird's egg.
There goes the Reverend,
says Mr. Waldock at the smoked herring brown window of the unwashed Sailor's Arms.
with his brolly and his odes. Fill them up, Sinbad. I'm on the treacle today.
The silent fishermen flush down their pints.
Oh, Mr. Waldo,
sighs Sinbad Sailors.
I dote on that gossamer bainan.
Love sings the spring. The bed spring grass bounces under birds' bums and lambs. And Gossamer Bainan, school teacher, spoon-stirred and quivering, teaches her Slobberdigullion class.
Oh, Mr. Waldo,
sighs Sinbad Sailors.
She's a lady all over.
And Mr. Waldo, who is thinking of a woman soft as Eve and sharp as sciatica to share his bread put in bed, answers,
No lady that I know is.
And if only Grandma'd die, cross my heart, I'd go down on my knees, Mr. Waldo, and I'd say, Miss Gossamer, I'd say.
when birds do sing a ding, a ding, a ding, sweet lovers love the spring.
And the morning school is over, and Captain Cat at his curtained school porthole, open to the spring sun tides, hears the naughty forfeiting children tumble and rhyme on the cobbles. The children tussle and run to the Cockle Street sweet shop, their pennies sticky as honey, to buy from Miss Mivanwy Price, who is cocky and neat as a puff-bosomed robin and her small round buttocks tight as ticks. Gobstoppers, big as wens, that rainbow as you suck. Brandy balls, wine gums, hundreds and thousands, liquors sweet as sick, nugget to tug and ribbon out like another red rubbery tongue, gum to glue in girls' curls, crimson cough drops to spit blood, ice cream cornets, dandelion and burdock, raspberry and cherryade, pop goes the weasel and the wind.
Gossamer Bainan, high heels out of school. The sun burns down through the cotton flowers of her dress into the bell of her heart and buzzes in the honey there and couches and kisses, lazy, loving and boozed in her red berried breast. Eyes run from the trees and windows of the street steaming gossamer and strip her to the nipples and the bees. She blazes naked past the sailor's arms, the only woman on the diademed earth. Sinbad sailor's places on her thighs, still dew-damp from the first man-going cock-crow garden, his reverend goat-bearded hands.
I don't care if he is common.
She whispers to her salad day deep self.
I want to gobble him up. I don't care if he does drop his H's.
She tells the stripped and mother of the world big-beamed and eve-hipped spring of herself.
So long as he's cucumber and hooves.
Sinbad sailor watches her go by, demure and proud, and schoolmarm in her crisp flowered dress and sun-defying hat, with never a look or lilt or wriggle, the butcher's unmalting ice maiden daughter, veiled forever from the hungry hug of his eyes.
Oh, Gossamer Bainan, why are you so proud?
He grieves to his Guinness.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful Gossamer Bainan. I wish that you were for me. I wish you were not so educated.
She feels his goat beard tickle in her middle of the world like a tuft of wiry fire, and she turns in a terror of delight away from his whips and whispery conflagration and sits down in the kitchen to a plate heaped high with chips and the kidneys of lambs.
In the blind-drawn dark dining room of schoolhouse, dusty and echoing as a dining room in a vault, Mr. and Mrs. Pugh are silent over cold grey cottage pie. Mr. Pugh reads as he forks the shroud meat in from Lives of the Great Poisoners. He has bound a plain brown paper cover around the book. Slyly, between slow mouthfuls, he side-spies up at Mrs. Pugh, poisons her with his eye, and then goes on reading. He underlines certain passages and smiles in secret.
Persons with manners do not read at the table,
says Mrs. Pugh. She swallows a digestive tablet as big as a horse pill, washing it down with clouded pea soup water.
Some persons were brought up in pigsties.
Pigs don't read at table, dear.
Bitterly, she flicks dust from the broken cruet. It settles on the pie in a thin gnat rain.
Pigs can't read, my dear.
I know one who can.
Alone In the hissing laboratory of his wishes, Mr. Pugh minces among bad vats and Jeroboams, tiptoes through spinneys of murdering herbs, agony dancing in his crucibles, and mixes, especially for Mrs. Pugh, a venomous porridge unknown to toxicologists, which will scald and viper through her till her ears fall off like figs, her toes grow big and black as balloons, and steam comes screaming out of her navel.
You know best, dear,
says Mr. Pugh, and quick as a flash, he ducks her in rat soup.
What's that book by your trough, Mr. Pugh?
It's a theological work, my dear. Lives of the great saints.
Mrs. Pugh smiles. An icicle forms in the cold air of the dining vault.
I saw you talking to a saint this morning, Saint Polly Garter. She was martyred again last night in Milkwood. Mrs. Organ Morgan saw her with Mr. Waldo.
And when they saw me, they pretended they were looking for nests,
said Mrs. Organ Morgan to her husband, with her mouth as full of fish as pelicans.
But you don't go nesting in long combinations, I said to myself, like Mr. Waldo was wearing. And you're dressed nearly over your head like Polly Garter's. Oh, they didn't fool me.
But one big gulp and the flounder's gone. She licks her lips and goes stabbing again.
And when you think of all those babies she's got, then all I can say is she'd better give up bird nesting. That's all I can say. It isn't the right kind of jobby at all for a woman that can't say no even to midgets. Remember Tom Spit? He wasn't any bigger than a baby and he gave her two. But they're two nice boys. I will say that. Fred Spit and Arthur. Sometimes I like Fred and sometimes I like Arthur. Who do you like best, Organ?
Back without any doubt. Back every time for me.
Organ, you haven't been listening to a word I said. It's Organ, Organ all the time with you.
And she burst into tears. And in the middle of her salty howling, nimbly spears a small flat fish and pelicans it whole.
And then Palestrina,
says Organ Morgan. Lord Cutglass in his kitchen full of thyme squats down alone to a dog dish marked Fido of peppery fish scraps and listens to the voices of his 66 clocks, one for each year of his loony age, and watches with love their black and white moony loud-lipped faces talking the earth away. Slow clocks, quick clocks, pendulum heart knocks, china, alarm, grandfather cuckoo, clocks shaped like Noah's whirring ark, clocks that bicker in marble ships, clocks in the wombs of glass women, hourglass chimers, to wit to woo clocks, clocks that pluck tunes, Vesuvius clocks, all black bells and lava, Niagara clocks that cataract their ticks, old time-weeping clocks with ebony beards, clocks with no hands, forever drumming out time without ever knowing what time it is. His 66 singers are all set at different hours. Lord Cutglass lives in a house and a life at siege. Any minute or dark day now, the unknown enemy will loot and savage downhill, but they will not catch him napping. 66 different times in his fish slimy kitchen. Ping, strike, tick, chime, and talk.
The lust and lilt and lather and emerald breeze and crackle of the bird praise and body of spring with its breast full of rivering May milk means to that lordly fish-head nibbler nothing but another nearness to the tribes and navies of the last black day, who'll sear and pillage down Armageddon Hill, to his double-locked, rusty-shuttered, tick-tock, dust-scrabbled shack at the bottom of the town that has fallen head over bells in love.
And I'll never have such loving again.
Pretty Polly hums and longs.
Now when the farmers' boys on the first fair day come down from the hills to drink and be gay, before the sun sinks I'll lie in their arms, for they're good, bad boys from the lonely farms. But I always think as we tumble into bed of little Willie Wee, who is dead, dead, dead.
The sunny, slow, lulling afternoon yawns and moons through the dozy town. The sea lolls, laps and idles in with fishes sleeping in its lap. The meadow's still as Sunday, the shut-eye tasseled bulls, the goat and daisy dingles nap, happy and lazy. The dumb duck ponds snooze. Clouds sag and pillow on Llargib Hill. Pigs grunt in a wet wallow bath and smile as they snort and dream. They dream of the acorn swill of the world, the rooting for pig fruit, the bagpipe dugs of the mother sow, the squeal and snuffle of yeses of the women pigs in rut. They mud bask and snout in the pig-loving sun. Their tails curl, they rollick and slobber and snore to deep after-swill sleep. Donkeys angelically drowse on donkey down.
Persons with manners,
snaps Mrs. Cold Pew,
do not nod at the table.
Mr. Pugh cringes awake. He puts on a soft, swooping smile. It is sad and grey under his nicotine egg yellow weeping walrus Victorian moustache, worn thick and long in memory of Dr. Crippen.
You should wait until you retire to your pigsty,
says Mrs. Pugh, sweet as a razor. His fawning measly quarter-smile freezes. Sly and silent, he foxes into his chemist's den, and there in a hiss and prussic circle of cauldrons and phials, brimful with pox and the Black Death, cooks up a fricassee of deadly nightshade, nicotine, hot frog, cyanide and bat spit for his needling, stalactity hag, and bednag of a poker-backed nutcracker wife.
I beg your pardon, dear.
He murmurs with a wheedle.
Captain Cat, at his window thrown wide to the sun and the clippered seas he sailed long ago when his eyes were blue and bright, slumbers and voyages. Earringed and rolling, I love you, Rosie Probert, tattooed on his belly. He brawls with broken bottles in the fog and babel of the dark dock bars, rovers with a herd of short and good time cows in every naughty port, and twines and souses with the drowned and blousy-breasted dead. He weeps as he sleeps and sails, and the tears run down his grog-blossomed nose.
One voice of all he remembers most dearly as its dream buckets down. Lazy early Rosie with the flaxen thatch, whom he shared with Tom Fred the donkey man, and many another seaman, clearly and near to him speaks from the bedroom of her dust. In that gulf and haven, fleets by the dozen have anchored for the little heaven of the night, but she speaks to Captain Napping Cat alone, Mrs. Probert.
From Duck Lane, Jack. Quack twice and ask for Rosie.
Is the one love of his sea life that was sardined with women.
What seas did you see Tom Cat, in your sailoring days, long, long ago? What sea beasts were in the wavery green when you were my master?
I'll tell you the truth. Seas barking like seals. Blue seas and green. Seas covered with eels and mermen and whales.
What sea did you sail, old whaler, when on the blubbery waves between Frisco and Wales, you were my bosun?
As true as I'm here, dear, you tomcat's tart, you landlubber Rosie, you cozy love, my easy as easy, my true sweetheart. Seas green as a bean, seas gliding with swans in the seal barking moon.
What seas were you rocking, my little deckhand, my favourite husband? In your sea boots and hunger, my duck, my whaler, my honey, my daddy, my pretty sugar sailor, with my name on your belly when you were a boy, long, long ago.
I'll tell you no lies. The only sea I saw was the seesaw sea, with you riding on it. Lie down, lie easy. Let me shipwreck in your ties.
Knock twice, Jack, at the door of my grave, and ask for Rosie.
Rosie Probert.
Remember her. She is forgetting. The earth which filled her mouth is vanishing from her. Remember me. I have forgotten you. I am going into the darkness, in the darkness forever. I have forgotten I was ever born.
Look, says a child to her mother as they pass by the window of Schooner House.
Captain Cat is crying.
Captain Cat is crying.
Come back! Come back!
Up the silences and echoes of the passages of the eternal night.
He's crying all over his nose,
says the child. Mother and child move on down the street.
He's got a nose like strawberries,
the child says. And then she forgets him too. She sees in the still middle of the blue-bagged bay no good boyo fishing from the Zanzibar.
No good boyo gave me 3 pennies yesterday, but I wouldn't,
the child tells her mother.
Boyo catches a whalebone corset. It is all he has caught all day.
Bloody funny fish.
Mrs. Diebread too gypsies up his mind's slow eye, dressed only in a bangle.
She's wearing her nightgown. Would you like this nice sweat coat set? Mr. Diebread too, Mrs. Diebread too?
No, I would not.
And a bite of my little apple.
He offers with no hope. She shakes her brass nightgown and he chases her out of his mind. And when he comes gusting back, there in the bloodshot center of his eye, a geisha girl grins and bows in a kimono of rice paper.
I want to be good by you, but nobody let me.
He sighs as she writhes politely. The land fades, the sea flocks silently away, and through the warm white cloud where he lies, silky tingling, uneasy Eastern music undoes him in a Japanese minute.
The afternoon buzzes like lazy bees round the flowers round Mayrose Cottage. Nearly asleep in the field of nanny goats who hum and gently butt the sun, she blows on a puffball.
He loves me. He loves me not. He loves me. He loves me not. He loves me, the dirty old fool.
Lazy she lies alone in clover and sweet grass. 17 and never been sweet in the grass. Ho ho.
Now the town is dusk. Each cobble, donkey, goose, and gooseberry street is a thoroughfare of dusk, and ceremonial dust, and night's first darkening snow, and the sleep of birds drift under and through the live dust of this place of love. Clarigib is the capital of dusk. Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard, at the first drop of the dusk shower, seals all her sea view doors, draws the germ-free blinds, sits erect as a dry dream on a high-backed hygienic chair, and wills herself to cold, quick sleep. At once, at twice, Mr. Ogmore and Mr. Pritchard, who all dead day long have been gossiping like ghosts in the woodshed, planning the loveless destruction of their glass widow, reluctantly sigh and sidle into her clean house.
You first, Mr. Ogmore.
After you, Mr. Pritchard.
No, Mr. Ogmore, you widowed her first.
And in through the keyhole, with tears where their eyes once were, they ooze and grumble.
Husbands,
says Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard in her sleep. There is acid love in her voice for one of the two shambling phantoms. Mr. Ogmore hopes that it is not for him. So does Mr. Pritchard.
I love you both.
Oh, Mrs. Ogmore.
Oh, Mrs. Pritchard.
Soon it will be time to go to bed. Tell me your tasks in order.
We must take our pajamas.
From the drawer marked pajamas.
And then you must take them off.
Down in the dusking town, May Rose Cottage, still lying in clover, listening to the nanny goats chew, draws circles of lipstick round her nipples.
I'm fast. I'm a bad lot. God will strike me dead. I'm 17. I'll go to hell.
She tells the goats.
You just wait. I'll sin till I blow up.
She lies deep, waiting for the worst to happen. The goats champ and sneer.
And at the doorway of Bethesda House, the Reverend Eli Jenkins recites to Clarigib Hill his sunset poem.
Every morning when I wake, dear Lord, a little prayer I make. Oh, please to keep thy lovely eye on all poor creatures born to die. And every evening at sundown, I ask a blessing on the town. For whether we last the night or no, I'm sure is always touch and go. We are not wholly bad or good who live our lives under Milkwood. And thou, I know, wilt be the first to see our best side, not our worst. Oh, let us see another day. Bless us this holy night, I pray. And to the sun we all will bow and say goodbye, but just for now.
Dusk is drowned forever until tomorrow. It is all at once night now. The windy town is a hill of windows, and from the lapped waves, the lights of the lamps in the windows call back the day and the dead that have run away to sea. All over the calling dark, babies and old men are bribed and lullabied to sleep.
Hushaby, baby, the Sandman is coming. Rockabye, grandpa, in the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall, and down will come Grandpa, whiskers and all.
Or their daughters cover up the old unwinking men like parrots, and in their little dark, in the lit and bustling young kitchen corners, all night long they watch, beady-eyed, the long night through, in case death catches them asleep.
Unmarried girls along in their privately bridal bedrooms, powder and curl for the dance of the world. They make in front of their looking glasses haughty or come-hithering faces for the young men in the street outside at the lamp-lit leaning corners who wait in the all-at-once wind to wolve and whistle.
The drinkers in the sailors' arms drink to the failure of the dance.
Down with the waltzing and skipping.
Dancing isn't natural.
Righteously says Cherry Owen, who has just downed 17 pints of flat, warm, thin Welsh bitter beer. Blind Captain Cat climbs into his bunk. Like a cat he sees in the dark. Through the voyages of his tears, he sails to see the dead.
Dancing Williams.
Still dancing.
And Jonah Jarvis.
Curly Bevan's skull.
Rosie with God, she has forgotten dying.
The dead come out in their Sunday best.
Listen to the night breaking.
Organ Morgan goes to the chapel to play the organ. He plays alone at night to anyone who will listen. Lovers, revelers, the silent dead, tramps or sheep. He sees Bach lying on a tombstone.
Johann Sebastian.
Who?
Johann Sebastian. Mighty Bach. Oh, Bach. Fuck.
To hell with you,
says Cherry Owen, who is resting on the tombstone on his way home. Mr. Mogg Edwards and Miss Mavanwy Price, happily apart from one another at the top and sea end of the town, write their every night letters of love and desire. In the warm white book of Llaragab, you will find the little maps of the islands of their contentment.
Oh, my Mog, I am yours forever.
And she looks around with pleasure at her own neat, never dull room, which Mr. Mogg Edwards will never enter.
Come to my arms, me van wee.
And he hugs his lovely money to his own heart. And Mr. Waldo, drunk in Milkwood, hugs his lovely Polly Garter under the eyes and rattling tongues of the neighbours and the birds. And he does not care. He smacks his live red lips, but it is not his name that Polly Garter whispers as she lies under the oak and loves him back. 6 feet deep, that name sings in the cold earth.
I always think, as we tumble into bed, of little Willie Wee, who is dead, dead, dead.
The thin night darkens. A breeze from the creased water sighs in the streets close under milk-waking wood. The wood whose every tree foot's cloven in the black glad sight of the hunters of lovers. That is a God-built garden to Mary and the sailors, who knows there is heaven on earth and the chosen people of his kind fire in Larrigab's land. That is the fair day farmhands wanton in ignorant chapel of bride beds. And to the Reverend Eli Jenkins, a green-leaved sermon on the innocence of men. The suddenly wind-shaken wood springs awake for the second dark time this one spring day.
Marvellous.